It is me again. It is Ryan Clark, and this is the 21st Century Composer Podcast. We're back once again. On a small little quick note, I think I have a new hobby. So, that's new. And it's Velcro too. I made it to where and then, this is my karate uniform. Same thing right here. And then got the US on the other side. USA, you feel me? I mean, I think that's my new hobby. That's what old women do, I think. But yeah, today we're going to be looking at a piece of mine. This podcast is for all the nerds out there. I'm finally giving it to you. And this is going to be an analysis of Stewart's Ballad, which is my piece that I wrote back in the summer of 23. It was for a competition. Fortunately, I didn't win, but it was for the New Mexico University New Composer Initiative. I think that's what it's called. Let me look and see who won that. Let's see who won. Stop breaking on me. New Mexico State University. Where is this at? Oh, here it is. So for 2023, the winner was Primavera by somebody named Keon Rive. Never heard of him. And I guess that was the point of the competition of you weren't supposed to know who this was. And it's probably somewhere on the internet to where you can see it. And tonight's choice of drink is Ghost. The orange cream. Not sponsored, by the way. So, my piece was written for that, but unfortunately it didn't win. So, without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain a little bit more of the background, what the piece is about, and then we're going to hop into actually listening to the piece and going section by section and kind of analyzing the structure and maybe a little bit of the harmony involved. And there is a document as well that I will link that is the quote-unquote formal analysis. But this one's just going piece by piece and just understanding what's going on. By the way, the more I record these and the more I listen back to them and the more I understand what my speaking flaws are. The first one I recorded was with Wilson, and I kept on saying, and and all that. And then the second time I kept on saying, a lot. And we're going to try and fix that as we go along. So I'm just being a little bit more conscious about it. And it is working, and I am enjoying, improving that aspect of myself as my speaking. Because that is the part of me that, just because of where I've grown up, I don't necessarily focus on speaking properly. That is something I neglect because I live in the northern part of Mississippi, so that's just how it is. Okay, so let me pull up this document, and I'm not going to read from it. I wish y'all could see it. I could have made it to where y'all could, but I'm just going to kind of skim through it. So the introduction of the document is, okay, this is an aid in understanding the piece, which is named Stewart's Ballad, by me. And this analysis should be free of any error regarding the interpretation. But performance interpretation should be left up to the conductor who is performing the piece. So it should be a freedom of interpretation for the conductor. And then background about me, where I was born, when I was born. I began composing at age 13, yada, yada, yada. If you listen to my other podcast, you should know a little bit about me already. So Stewart's Ballad was written for my grandmother, who was named Christine Stewart. She died on November 1st, 2018 in Brandon, Mississippi, which was where my aunt was. She had ended up moving where my aunt was. So let's go on ahead and start listening. And I'm going to have to turn this up a little bit. There we go. Alright, so that was the first 8 measures of the piece, and obviously this serves as the introduction, right? This is where we're kind of setting the tone for the rest of the piece as something that is reflective, something that is in memory. Like I said, this is in memory of my grandmother. This is dedicated to my grandmother. And we open up with a oboe solo at pick up to measure 4. Pick up to measure 2. I'm reading this wrong, excuse me. Then at measure 8, we see alto saxophone solo. So the oboe solo outlines what I would like to call melody A. Now this piece does not follow an ABA structure, but it takes some of those concepts and applies them here, because as we'll find out later, there is a melody B, and then that alto saxophone solo, right, that is what I call a minor melody. It's, you'll see it later on, but it's not a major melody that you'll see used again. And how we can look at this section metaphorically is a child and his or her grandmother are just doing small mundane things like bird watching, or they're playing with the child's toys, or they're just spending time together. It's very sweet, very mellow. It's very, very low key, in other words. So let's go on ahead and keep going. So you can kind of tell that this is a transitional section, and this is measures 9 through 13. This is just transitional material. All the brass come in because up to this point it's just woodwinds and I think string basses in there. I would have to double check. I don't have the score pulled up right now. But up to this point it is just clarinets, and then later on you hear the oboe solo, and then you hear all the flutes and the rest of the other oboe, and then you hear the alto saxophone later, and then all the brass come in. Repeating those same two chords, which those chords, I don't know if y'all are going to be able to hear this. It's just the A flat sus2. And then you can look at that other chord as a D minor 7, no 5. So it's just. And then that is kind of what sets the tone. And then the brass do that back for that first measure 9. And then there's a lot more harmonic movement because we're getting a little bit of tension in this transitional sense. And then da 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 da, unison and octaves. And then everybody breaks off. Excuse me. But with that in mind, how we can look at this section metaphorically. This section can be looked at as like the grandmother, which this is also, by the way, based off kind of the true events of what had happened. The grandmother's health begins to slowly decline, but it's not. The grandmother and the child are still not separated, and the child is around the age of 8 or 9 years old. So that's why we kind of feel a little bit of tension. Da 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 da. It's a big old tootie, and then it kind of slowly da 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 da, and then we go on to the next section at measure 14. So let's go. Okay, so, and then just a really quick note, there's supposed to be a caesura after that chord. The playback just got messed up somehow, and I've tried to fix it. I couldn't fix it. But anyway, let's dive into this section because there's a lot to pull apart. So, at measure 14, where this section starts, we begin to see the new major melody, B, being outlined in the flutes and oboes. That da 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 da, and then it just develops and it develops. it goes on for that, and then by measure 20, we get a pickup in the low brass and the string bass. And they take the spotlight for the very end, and then metaphorically that I'll have to look at. You know what? I'm gonna pull up the score because I'm making myself look stupid right now, not being able to play this. Because I want to be able to play it for you and it be accurate. Okay, there it is. Oh, I can just look at the piano. So. So, metaphorically, we look at that as the child is saying goodbye. Those last three measures of the same chord change being repeated, we can look at that as the child is forced to say goodbye to the grandmother because the grandmother is now being moved elsewhere for better care, right? So this is like goodbye, 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 and then this for sure can represent the time where the child and the grandmother don't see each other at all. There's a lot of separation there. And let's go on. I think that's a decent explanation of what I'm trying to go for here. So that section of music, I'll have to read from my notes because, to be honest with you, I forgot what I was doing. I'm just being honest with you because I wrote this so long ago, and when I remembered it, I immediately forgot it. So, measure 25 holds a kind of reprise of major melody A with a trumpet solo. And then the melody gets passed around in about measure 30 between the flute oboe group and the clarinet alto saxophone sections, which then leads into measure 33, which is my favorite section, the atonal section. And the atonal so everything between measure 25 and measure 33 is kind of this, we're developing this very strong tension because we're about to get the news that grandmother has just passed. So let's continue on. Okay, so when we get to that big tootie, we are basically doing some polychords right here. And in the piano part, I don't even think it covers it all. Um, like I can try and play like read these out to you. So. That would be like a F dominant 7 in third inversion. That's that first chord, so that is like a F dominant 7 in like third inversion, and then an E sus2. Not exactly the most pleasing sound. And then this next chord, let's look at this. So that is a D, E flat. I don't know what you would call that, but I want to be honest with you. It's a weird voicing of something on top of a C dominant 7. Still very not pleasing to the ear. And then the next note, on beat 4 we have is a B flat major 7 in root position. And then a C major on top. So that isn't necessarily a polychord, because you can look at that as a sharp 13 sharp 11. So that in a sense doesn't have the amount of dissonance as the previous two. So that was a little fun fact about that section. But it's at this section that we finally, like in the metaphorical sense, we just learned that grandmother is dead. She has passed to be with the Lord. And it affects the child very strongly in the moment, but really not for long. Because it quickly resolves, or I don't think resolve is the right term here, but we eventually find our way back to E flat major by measure 38. And then we officially changed the key at measure 40 with the key signature, but it is very obvious that we're back in the key of E flat, back in measure 38. So let's continue on. Okay, so this section is about measure 48, and by measure or pick up to measure 52, we have the oboe solo again, kind of do a reprise of major melody A, but it's kind of slightly altered towards the tail end of it, and this is kind of to represent the fact that the the pain is still kind of there. Um, the pain is still kind of there, but he's getting there. It's not as he or she's not. He or she is almost getting there. Excuse me. But there's still a little bit of pain that comes with mourning, which I'm pretty sure we all know. Well, I'm not gonna say we all know because I don't even know exactly all the stages of mourning, but we all know about the kind of stages of mourning. It's a process. Yes, it is a process that you have to go through, and our child here is still in that process. They're still reflecting on their grandmother right now, but they still kind of feel that pain. Okay, let's go. Alright, so that section we just got done listening to is once again a reprise of that same chord sequence that we had from the beginning of the piece, which is the A flat sus 2 and then the D minor 7. Okay. And our person or child at this time is now, they're starting to feel better. It's not the same kind of, the pain is not really there, and we're starting to look at their grandmother in more of a, positive light than as before. We felt that pain of, oh my goodness, she's gone, what am I going to do with myself? And now we're moving on, and we're being able to look back at their life, our grandmother's life, as something that we can just look back on and laugh at and smile at in turn and not feel bad, because we've moved on. And I'm wasting words. We can look back and laugh and smile and feel good about what our grandmother left us with. Okay. Excuse me, y'all. And let's move on to this ending. And that is the end of the piece. And what we just got done listening to was basically the conclusion. In measure 56, it is a triumphant infant ending. Excuse me, I was about to say elephant. Triumphant ending. The melody is kind of being passed around the saxophones and the bassoons, and then second, third clarinet, and alto clarinet. The child is now able to be happy and complete again. We have gone through the whole mourning process, and now we're finally okay. We're all good now. We're complete and we're whole, and we can move on with our life. So anyhow, let's kind of look at some specific moments in the piece where the harmony is kind of confusing to look at. And I will be referring to the piano part for some of this stuff, because a lot of the background material is in the piano part, so it's a lot easier to look at that than to try and transpose everything and all those staffs. We just got it on one staff, so we can look at that. So if you have your score, you can look along. And a lot of this, I mean, you could sight read. So we hit on the atonal section, those polychords. Let's look at one moment in particular that I want to look at. Where is it at? So we have measure 32. We're starting to shift into the atonal section. So let's look at this first chord, and I'm going to tell you what it is and how we go about it. Turn up this piano a little bit. So we have G. So I don't know if you can hear that. So looking at that, that is a flat major 7th sus 2. It is just voiced very weird. And it is weird to the ear, especially when you're in ensemble. And let me put my pedal down. Where's my pedal at? All right. I lost my place. Oh, there it is. So locking this in is weird because that A flat's in the bass. And it doesn't sound right. But that is the root of the chord technically. Or at least that's how I'm looking at it, to be the root of the chord. Now, for example, let's try G. That's the 7th. And that's very nasty sounding. What about B flat? There's no real bass note that I can think of. I mean, let's try E flat. That mic can work, but when we look at this next chord, harmonically it is a little weird. It's the same chord, or it's the same kind of chord type, like a major 7th sus 2. So let's look. So it's a E sharp, F sharp. And then kind of the same thing in the right hand. So like I said, it was a major 7th sus 2, so an F sharp major 7th sus 2. And the root note, or the bass note for that, is an F sharp. Oh my goodness. To me, that sounds right. And the melody, it should help that, because it's a because with the melody, I feel like it makes the context make sense of that measure. So we'll kind of hold these out and we'll go from there. Because when it jumps into the A-tone section, all HELL decides it wants to break loose. That's my reasoning for having those root notes in there, because if you look at the tuba part, it's obvious that the root of the chord is supposed to be that A flat, and then that F sharp on beat 3 for that second half note. That is another. It's weird to the ear in rehearsal, but in context, it's supposed to make sense. Another thing I want to point out is the trumpet tutti, or the trumpet parts at measure 29. I want to point this out. And this is obvious in the piano part because it is a bunch of sharps. And so, for example, the first trumpet has D sharp, and C sharp. Which should, in concert pitch, be C sharp, and then make sure I'm looking right. B natural. And then the second trumpet is C sharp, B sharp, and B sharp, which should be B natural, A sharp, A sharp. So and then in the third trumpet, it is just A sharp, which should just be G sharp the entire time. So if we play that together, it should be the first. Almost cussed. That should be the first cluster. The second cluster should be G sharp, A sharp, and then C sharp. And then, I'm talking in concert pitch, by the way. And then the third cluster should be G sharp, A sharp, and then B natural. So that one's going to be a little crunchy, but the dynamic level is supposed to be MP, so it is going to be crunchy. Now, I'm going to be quite frank with you. All I can tell you is that it looks like it's supposed to be from the key of concert F sharp because of how I have it notated, which that is one of my favorite keys because it's black key, one white key, two black keys, a white key, and it just feels good on my hands on keys. So I would imagine that part in the trumpets is supposed to be in the key of concert F sharp. So the only thing that I can really suggest is make sure they know their enharmonics if your band is performing this. And then looking at measure 25, there's a lot of just harmonic movement that are happening on even and odd beats. Especially for these first two measures, it's like da 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 da, half note, single chord, go on. Things like that are going on here, and those disposition of strong and weak beats, that is intentional. That is supposed to disorient the listener. It is not supposed to disorient the performers. So it may not seem right to the performers, but it is correct. Nobody accidentally writes a tie like that. I'm trying to see if there's anything else, because most of everything else is diatonic until you get to the ending. It kind of modulates up a lot. I'm gonna give you a specific. Yeah, measure 56. It's like we're in the key of. Yeah, we're obviously in the key of E flat. I'm gonna try and read this. So this is measure 56. So this is what I see going on here is a so that is like, you can look at that either as like the A flat sus2 over E flat, or I think this is supposed to be like a E flat sus4, but just voiced in like I guess what would be first inversion, like first inversion where you start on the third, but you're starting on the second this time. I guess that may be what I've been going through, but yeah, you can look at it as A flat sus2 over E flat. And then I think we literally shift up the next. Well, no. Is that a misprint? I don't know. That could be a misprint. Looking at that B natural and measure, I guess 57, yeah. In the piano treble clef staff, we'll probably leave it as is. And then, because that next chord is, if it's a misprint, then it's just supposed to be a B natural sus2, because I mean we're outlining that's what the bass is outlining, and then alright, so measure 58. Yeah, measure 58. We have a G in the bass, and then yeah, we're outlining a G minor, and then there we have a B flat and F minor, which that's literally just supposed to be outlining a B flat dominant 7, because a mistake I made while writing this, it was not an intentional mistake, was typically when you write a dominant dominant 7 chord, excuse me, or like a 5 chord, you would write as a dominant 5, right? So, for example, what would be correct here is a B flat dominant 7. So, I guess if we're going to voice it like how we did here, it would be that. But I think instead I did a dominant 4. And I think that's what I ended up doing on accident. Yeah. And then, because it resolves down back to the tonic, which is E flat. But it was too late to fix it. It's already been through so many revisions and so many things, and parts have already been printed out for a group to perform it. So we just left it in, and to me it just kind of grew on me. I mean, it's not correct, but we chilling. So I think those are kind of like the highlights of kind of a lot of the harmony going on. A lot of modulation here and there, just going up stepwise. And all in all, this is one of my pieces that have been like a big hit with a lot of people. And I mean, I can appreciate that because I did spend a lot of time on this piece in particular. This piece it had a purpose. It had a story to tell, as opposed to prior, I would just write to write. This piece served a purpose. It paid tribute to somebody that, even though I didn't get to have much of a relationship with them towards the end of their life, it was still somebody I was fond of and somebody I was proud to be related to. I mean, my grandmother, she was awesome. I mean, she got her degree in elementary education at the very, very young age of 56 years old. I mean, no, 54. Excuse me. I had to double check myself, and she retired in 2012, and she suffered from Alzheimer's, which, if you have somebody in your life that suffers from it, you understand how sad of a disease it is. You slowly forget a lot of things, and when you pass from it, it's sad. It's a sad disease. But nonetheless, I'm proud of who my grandmother was. I'm proud that I could have the opportunity to pay tribute to her sometime in my lifetime. And the premiere of this piece is supposed to happen on April 15th, 2024. And there's going to be some publicity to it, because obviously this is my first kind of big breakthrough. My premiere, not only as a composer but as a conductor, because I will be conducting it, and so far we've been rehearsing it, and they're starting to get it, the performers. I've answered a lot of questions about, is this the right note? And most of the time it is. The harmony is non-conventional, and also this isn't educational music by any means. This was literally meant for college groups. And I put a lot of time into it. I put a lot of time into analyzing and making notes and making revisions where need be. And I'm proud of it. I don't know how else to put it. I'm really proud of it. I'm sure that Grandma would feel the same. I feel like it's important for us in the arts to use our talents and use our gifts and things like that for things like this. Paying tribute to people that have been impactful in our lives, such as my grandmother. And I'm working on, or I have a concept for a tuba concerto for tuba and wind ensemble, and I'm gonna dedicate that to somebody. It's an arrangement of "Do Not Cast Me Away in My Old Age" by Pavel. Just something. The guy that wrote "Salvation Is Created," I think. I think it was that guy. However you say his name. And I mean, because the original medium was for basso profundo and choir. There's a concerto for basso profundo and choir. And the basso profundo is a male voice that can go as low as a B flat 1, so like a pedal B flat on like a trombone. So they'd walk down like, oh. And they can sing that. There's some that can go down to that F sharp. And it's crazy. And I mean, I could try to hit that with like subharmonics. See, I can't even do it. I used to be able to. I was sick not too long ago, so that's probably why. Excuses, but anyway, enough of me rambling. We'll save that for another time. I appreciate y'all. I hope this aids anybody that's looking at my piece in rehearsing it and maybe answering some questions about my piece in terms of maybe not right pitches, all in all, but some of the more confusing parts harmonically. Locking some of those chords in is weird. It's really weird. Like, for example, that major 7 sus2. I didn't break it. It's that right there. It's that cluster of the 7 root 2. Then you have the 5th on top. That by itself doesn't make sense. That makes a little more sense. Add the bass note. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but in context it does. But anyway, once again, thank you. Have a good night, good evening, good morning, whatever time it is for you. Have a good one. Alright, bye.